So Krishna further says, Karmanaiva hi samsiddhim masthitha janakadayah lokasangrahamevapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. Even kings like Janaka and others attained the perfectional stage by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. So Krishna is giving an example of Janaka Maharaja, who was the father of Mother Sita. So Janaka Maharaja, he was a pure devotee. He had no duties to perform in this world. Still, to educate his citizens, he would go and fight. To teach that in order to maintain law and order, fighting is essential. And he would encourage his Kshatriya kings and other soldiers to fight vigorously to protect law and order and to protect citizens. So, even though he personally had no duties to perform, he performed his duty as a Kshatriya to set an example. Yad yad acharati shreshtastabta devetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastat anuvartate. Whatever action is performed by a great man, common men follow in his footsteps. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So Janaka Maharaja, he was a leader. So he set an example that everyone should perform his prescribed duties without attachment to results. So Krishna is clearly telling, Yad yad acharati shreshtas tatta devetaro janahan. Whatever action is performed by a great man, common men follow in his footsteps. Sayat pramanam kurute lokastadanuvartate. Whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So we should follow in the footsteps of great authorities. And who are the great authorities? Authorities are those people who follow the directions given in the scriptures. One does not become great by inventing his own method of so-called spiritual elevation. One becomes great by following the scriptures as taught by pure devotees. Nowadays people, they buy some book on their own. In Shiva Purana, it is said Shiva is great. In Devi Mahatmya, it is said Durga is great. Then in some other Purana, it is said some other god is great. So they fight even in the name of Puranas and Vedas and Upanishads. They don't know that one has to understand scriptures under the guidance of an expert spiritual master. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smritir jnana vapoha ancha vedaisha sarvair ahameva vedyo vedantakrit vedavideva chaham. Krishna says, I am seated in the hearts of every living being and I know the Vedas, I am the compiler of the Vedas and I am to be known by the Vedas. So ultimately, whether it may be Shiva Purana or Devi Mahatmya or any other Upanishad, ultimately by studying all the scriptures, we have to understand that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and we are supposed to surrender to Krishna. Without knowing the goal of the Vedic scriptures, if one just takes one scripture and tries to understand it without knowing the complete picture, one becomes confused, he creates disturbance in his own life and he creates disturbance in the society. So, a great person is that person who understands Vedic scriptures under the guidance of the expert spiritual master, coming in one of the four paramparas, which I have explained in the second chapter. So one has to take shelter of such a bona fide spiritual master, understand what is Vedic scriptures, understand Bhagavad Gita properly, and follow according to the guidance given by the spiritual master. In that way, one becomes a great person. Without following the guidance of a spiritual master, no one can become a great man in this world. So, whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So Krishna, he is the Supreme Lord. He has nothing to do in this material world. But we see that Krishna is present in the battlefield as the chariot driver of Arjuna. Why is Krishna taking part in this fight? So that Krishna clears in this section. Name parthasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam varta eva cha karmani. O son of Pritha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems. Nor am I in want of anything, nor have I need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in work. So Krishna is Supreme Lord, for him there is no need of working. He is self-satisfied, he has nothing to achieve in this material world, everything belongs to him, and he maintains every living being. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bhavanam yo vidadhati kaman. So in the Upanishads it is said that the Supreme Lord Krishna is the chief among all the eternal living beings. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam. He is supremely conscious living being among all the individual conscious living beings. What's the difference between us and God? Eko bahunam yo vidadhati kaman. He is the one singular supreme person who satisfies the desires of all living beings. So he is the satisfier of the desires of every living being. He himself is self-satisfied and he can satisfy unlimited desires of unlimited living beings. So he has nothing to achieve in this material world. Even then, we see that Krishna is also engaged in working. Why does he do it? It is just for the matter of setting the right example so that people can follow. So Krishna says, if he doesn't perform this duty of a Kshatriya, if he doesn't act, what happens? Krishna says, Yadi hyaham na varteyam jatu karmanya tandritaha mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashaha. For if I did not engage in work, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. Utsideyurime loka nakuryam karma chedaham sankarasya cha kartasyam upahanyami maf prajaha. If I should cease to work, then all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would also be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all sentient beings. So Krishna is explaining that if he did not act as a Kshatriya and set a right example, what would happen? Certainly all men would follow Krishna's path. They would say, oh, Krishna only did not do his duty, why should we do our duty? In that way, what would happen? Utsideyo rime loka nakuryam karma chedaham samkarasya cha kartasyam upahanyam ima prajahan. If I should cease to work, then all these worlds would be put to ruination, and I would also be the cause of creating unwanted population. So there would be mass of men who would tell that Krishna did not fight, Krishna did not do his duties, so why are you telling us to do our duties? In that way there would be unwanted population created who would only create disturbance in the society. So to set the right example, even though Krishna is Supreme Lord, when he appears within this human society, he follows the standard rules and regulations given in the scriptures for the human beings and for making spiritual progress. So Krishna follows these routine instructions, just like if we study Krishna's daily activities. It's explained in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna would rise early, 1.5 hours before sunrise. He would take bath, then he would go and visit various temples. He would offer his respects to his elderly fathers and mothers. So, and then he would offer them gifts. He would meet brahmanas, he would gift them. He would give them in charity grains and cows. Then he would go to his assembly house and then conduct his kingly duties. So Krishna performed all the duties of a householder very, very nicely. So in that way, Krishna set a perfect example of how one should live while living in this material world and make spiritual progress. So further Krishna says, Sakta akarmanya vidvamso yatha kurvanti bharata kuryad vidvams tatha saktas chikir shurloka sangraham. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, similarly, the learned may also act but without attachment for the sake of leading people on the right path. As I was explaining that generally in this material world, people are very ignorant about aim of life. They work for the sake of achieving some results. So Krishna is telling, Saktaha karmani avidvamso yatha kurvanti bharata. With great attachment, people work hard for achieving the desired results. So Krishna is telling, Kuryad vidvam sata saktas chikirshur loka sangraham. Similarly, learned may also act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. The difference between learned and not learned is, learned people do their duties without attachment to the results. So whether it is success or failure, they are unaffected. On the other hand, those who are not learned, they are attached to the results. When they get the results, they become very elevated and they become very proud and they glorify themselves that I worked hard and achieved it. And when they don't get the desired result, they become very sad, morose, and they start blaming everyone else. So in this way, the learned, they suffer the results of the work. On the other hand, the learned men, they are not at all affected by the results. They are always equipoised. So being equipoised is very, very essential to become detached from this material world and elevate spiritually. So Krishna says, Na buddhi bhedam janayed ajnanam karma sanginam joshet sarva karmani vidvan yukta samacharan. Let not the wise disrupt the minds of the ignorant who are attached to fruitive action. They should not be encouraged to refrain from work, but to engage in work in the spirit of devotion. So, because the general mass of people, they are attached to the results, so they have to be encouraged to work, and gradually they should be trained so that in such a way that they can offer the results of that work to please the Supreme Lord. So they should be encouraged to engage in work in the spirit of devotion. So that is called Karma Yoga.